finally, it's time to take a look at the last remaining assault frigate. This is the Breacher Assault. Now, the Breacher Assault does follow the classic Mimeter building technique. There is a bunch of solar panels, there is a lot of rust on the ship, and there is a lot of duct tape holding all this together. And I have to say, the Punisher Assault might be my favorite looking one, although the most fun one might be the Breacher Assault. Missiles are indeed very fun. So let's take a look at the trade description. Plus 5 second damage control activation time. Advanced micro operation modus is the same as on the previous 3 assault frigates. Now the advanced frigate command bonus will be a little bit different because this is a boat that uses missiles, so it will have missile activation time bonus minus 5%, and it has a minus 7.5 plus 7.5% shield booster amount. So this is a active shield tank ship. 3 high, 3 low, 3 medium, 3 combat, and 3 engineering rigs. 3207 is the overall defense. This is a shield tank. It can lock 5 seconds. The capacitor is average, comparable to the capacitors on the other assault frigates. Now, the Breacher Assault is definitely, I would say, the fastest, or the second fastest. Actually, this is a Mimeter ship, so it probably is the fastest assault frigate, which makes this a very good candidate for a speed tank. Now, the build will be interesting. I have the small missile launchers. 4.1 kilometer per second is the velocity. The damage application is really good. 1 disruptor, dual webs, 1 micro warp drive, a medium booster, and a damage control in the low slots. As for the rigs, I have 2 bay loading accelerators and 1 Warhead catalyst. As for the engineering rigs, dual capacitor control circuits and 1 auxiliary thruster. Now the nanocore is the Breacher NCO core. Basically, I follow the same nanocore lineup that I followed on the previous 3 ships, and I got the missile damage bonus, although you can pick the other one as well. And we also have the Wheel of Steel core on this ship that can give you extra shield boost. Can be very useful. You can make this little boat very, very tanky. And you have the other blue nanocores that can be obtained from the market, as well as the green ones, so you have a wide variety of nanocores to choose from for this little boat. Now, the capacitor is definitely not in the best shape with this build, and that's why I usually like to use 1 Nosferatu for these assault frigates. As for the implants, you have 2 options, or 3 options. You have the support projection, tactical missiles, and warhead charge. Let's go with the tactical missiles first, because that one is one of the new implants. The general units will be focused on micro warp drive or afterburn output boost and shield booster efficiency. That way you can maintain the capacitor for a longer duration. With the small Nosferatu, this ship should be capacitor stable, and I will show you how that works. Let's undocking, and let's take a look at the active stats on this boat. Okay, let me quickly adjust the modules. Nice and easy. Alright, excellent. So, let's orbit and let's take a look at the stats. 3.8 kilometers per second is the micro warp drive speed, which is pretty solid, I would say. Capacity 23 seconds, 5.7 thousand is overall defense, and 278.72 DPS, which is not bad. The normal small missile launchers have very good alpha, but a long activation time, that's why the DPS is low. 369.31 DPS, and with the second attribute active, 461.63 DPS on the small missile launchers. They have a decent range, decent application, and very good velocity. Overall, pretty solid stats. Let's dock and let's swap to the Warhead charge. Now the Warhead charge is one of my favorites. It's so satisfying to use with small missiles. It's very satisfying to use with the torpedo launchers. Overall, a very interesting implant that does work really well with missiles. Of course, I mean it's a missile implant after all. The general unit layout will be the same. Let me just remove the two units that are not necessary. Okay, that's better. And let's undock and let's check out the missile stats with the current missile warhead implant.
Undocking.
Now the tactical missiles have higher paper damage, but it lasts for about 60 seconds, while the warhead charge has the sustained DPS, a constant DPS output, a little bit lower than the DPS on the tactical missiles, but it lasts for a very long time, and that's why I just like to use them. 25.64 km with the precision mode, or long range mode, my apologies, and with the precision mode, with the extra damage application, the DPS will be lower for both modes, although the explosion radius 13.77, which is very nice. Okay, well, let's check out the maximum DPS, 348.42 DPS with the explosive thermal EM or kinetic missiles. All give the same damage boost. Now the next build involves the rocket launchers. I really like the rocket launchers. They have a very nice rate of fire, excellent damage application, short range, but overall it is very satisfying to use. And let me just quickly replace the long range disruptor into a scrambler, because this is a close range build and you will be orbiting very close to the target. One scrambler, one Nosferatu, one web, an afterburner, medium booster, and a damage control. I like this build. I believe that this build might be one of the better ones for this boat. And let's undock and let's go back to the tactical missiles. I want to show you the DPS that you can get from the tactical missiles and from the warhead charge with this build. Again, these ships are very cheap and you should use cheap modules. I use these modules because I already have them, so they can be a good example of how the build can look. Although the modules can be different, the overall idea will be about the same. There is no difference in that. Okay, let's orbit and let's turn on the implant. 474.90 DPS, and with the second attribute the DPS is almost 600, 593.63, which is honestly really good. And 1.5 km per second is the afterburner speed. You can get that up to 2.3, 2.4 km per second with a better rig layout for speed. 70,000 is the overall hit point when the damage control is activated, which is comparable to the other assault frigates. Okay, well let's go and swap to the warhead charge to show the sustained DPS that you can get with this build. The warhead charge again is really nice to use with the rapid missiles, with the rocket launchers, torpedo launchers. They increase the rate of fire, they make the application better, and overall it makes the missile ship a lot more fun. But again, that's from my personal experience over here. Okay, let's orbit and let's take a look at the DPS. 322. 9 km range with long range mode, 304.66 with the precision mode, 6.89 meter is the explosion radius, which is very small, and that's 100% of the damage applied to the target. 448.02 DPS when I swap to the DPS mode, when I swap to the explosive or thermal missiles. And again, it looks pretty good. I'm fairly satisfied with the current result that I have. 509.28 DPS with the ballistic control, and this is basically the build that I would use for missions. Now for high sec, You don't really need a lot of tank. Now, with some ships you will have to do some good piloting, because you don't want to be going at a straight line against the battleship that might have good tracking, and well, if you go at a straight line you might get popped, and this video will show you an example of that later on. You will see what I'm talking about. Now, I orbit at 0, and so far I see no issues with this little boat. The capacitor is surprisingly stable with this build. The small Nosferatu can easily maintain the shield booster for a very long time, and this is something that I wasn't able to get on the Merlin Assault, because the Merlin just did not have enough power to do this for some reason. I think the main reason for that is the Raelians. The Raelians have more power than the missile launchers for some reason, so I wasn't really able to replicate the same build, but this ship with this build is capacitor stable with the medium shield booster running at all times. The Merlin unfortunately wasn't able to achieve that, although I could technically do some tricks and get that to work, but it would be quite expensive. So in that aspect, the British Assault does work better in the active tanking way, although the Merlin Assault can also do a passive tank easily because of the high shield resistance, although this ship relies on the booster because it is an active tank frigate, and as an active tank frigate you should take advantage of all the bonuses that you get on the ship. Don't do a armor tank fit on this, it's not going to work well. The shield tank is just flawless, especially with a medium booster, and you will not have any issues with this boat if you use it as a shield tank. If you do an armor tank, well, yeah, it's probably not going to end well, but so far I'm quite satisfied with the DPS output. The damage output is constant and stable. Some of the other ships that I tested out did not have a stable DPS output. The DPS went up or down depending on the speed, on the angle, on the tracking, and of course on the ship that I'm shooting at. But with this ship the DPS is constant, and you can basically predict when the mission will be completed. Now, in low sec you probably want to use the long range build, because the long range build is more safe, because you will be away from the scramblers of the target or webs, and that way you can easily warp out if a hunter pops in. Hunters are mostly in Galente and in Caldari space. Meanwhile, Mimatar and Amar space is mostly empty, and since thankfully I actually managed to log back into my alt, and now the alt is back up and running, I will probably go and send my alt in Amar space to live for a while, because why not? I want to test the theory out for myself, and I will give you the result in couple days. But the theory states that I should be pretty undisturbed in Amar or Caldari space. Again, most pirates are in Galente and Caldari, least pirates are in Amar, so if you want to run missions in peace without being disturbed, without having 17 Macarials and 15 Asteros lurking around your mission, then I would suggest you try Amar and Mimatar space, and perhaps you will be able to run the missions in peace. Well, perhaps one day in the future of the game, perhaps the developers make something special for Amar or Mimatar space, and perhaps most players will move over there, and then Galente and Caldari might be peaceful. I don't know. Again, a lot of things can happen, so we can only speculate. This is the next wave. I always focus down the small ships first. The small ships first because of the tracking that they might have. They have the higher chance to hit me. The large ships usually don't, but I have to make sure that the small ones are gone before I go after the big ones, especially if you're flying a small frigate. That will be important. The big ship might not have enough tracking to hit you, but the small one will probably have, so make sure to kill that first. That's usually how I do things in this game. And again, approaching at a straight line is never a good idea, and I keep making that mistake. And I keep making that mistake in this video, and well, I'll keep making that mistake until something happens. And yeah, a good example on what not to do in a frigate. But my job here is to show you what to do and what not to do with your ship. That way you can become a better pilot. Okay, let's go to the next. Actually, not next wave. Next ship that's in the mission. This is wave 2 out of 3. Honestly, not a bad clear time. It does clear this very fast. Now, I would use the assault frigates maximum for like tier 6, tier 8 storylines. That's basically the optimal difficulty for these ships. While you can do the tier 10, it might take a while, so the optimal would be about tier 6, tier 8 with the long range missiles, and you can clear them in peace without being disturbed. Again, a small ship has a small signature radius and overall a small scan radius. Most hunters that scan are going to be scanning in a cover tops cruiser, and even frigates that are scanning for players in low sec do notify other frigates when they click on the red scanner, so you have a higher chance to survive in low sec with a small ship than in a big ship. That's just fact. Big ships get eaten very quickly, small ships don't, because small ships are much more difficult to scan and much more difficult to catch. And this is something that a lot of other players just don't talk when they are recommending you a ship. So that's why I prefer, and that's why I encourage everyone to fly the smaller ships for storyline missions or encounters in low sec, because in low sec you are not really safe. When you're running a mission, you can be scanned down, and when you get scanned down, you can get destroyed. But if you can detect the scanner and if you can warp out on time, then you are not losing the ship, and the hunter, the pirate, will simply move on to the next system, and you can return to run the mission. Although I would still suggest that you wait a couple minutes, because a lot of hunters, including myself, like to go to a new system, wait 2 minutes, and then come back straight to the mission where the target is located, so you can kind of catch them when they feel that they're safe. So I advise that you wait for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes to make sure that the pirate does not come back, or even if they come back, then log out for a couple minutes, wait for them to completely lose interest, and then when it's completely safe, you can safely return to run the mission, because they don't lose the mission location or scan location when they leave the system. It lasts for about 30 minutes to 1 hour, so that's basically, if you want to be 100% safe, wait 1 hour, 2 hours, and then come back to return the storyline mission or encounter. Although with encounters you have a 5-hour limit, so make sure you complete the mission within the 5 hours after you accept the mission. But so far the breacher assault here has no issues, no real issues. The capacitor is in a fantastic shape. The Nosferatu does a fantastic job to maintain the capacitor. The shield booster does a fantastic job to maintain the shield, and everything just works really well and really synchronized. A high DPS frigate can actually run low sec storylines better than a cruiser. There's so many options in this game to choose from, so many tactics, so many ideas that players can use to complete the mission in safety. You can technically make a anti-scan syllable that can get a scan notification from the average cruiser, from the average frigate. It will not be notified by an Astro, that's for sure. So if there is an Astro that's built for scanning, and if the Astro pilot has a fleet, then it might be problematic, because then the Astro might actually get in your mission and you will not notice that. But in most cases that should not be a problem, because most don't use an Astro alt, and those who do use the Astro alt are well known. You can basically spot the alt in local and warp safely out. That's also one of the tactics that you can use in low sec, but a anti-scan cruiser is a very good idea. You can get notified even if a skilled frigate scans you down. Of course, that doesn't count if it's a Statios or Astro scan you. Those can be problematic, but everything else will be no problem. Will absolutely give you no issues, because you will notice the scan notification. And when you get the scan notification, I recommend that you immediately warp out, because that's going to be 4 seconds of delay. And here I got slapped, by the way. I got slapped by the big boat, because I was heading at a straight line towards them, and well, I got almost popped. It yeeted off my shield and it left me in armor, but the shield booster kicked in really quickly, and now the shield is back to 100%. But a second time, if that would happen, I would be dead. So yeah, this is why you don't approach ships at a 90-degree angle, because a battleship like that will hit you and it will yeet your frigates without a problem. And this is exactly what almost happened to me. So yeah, now back to the low sec piracy stuff. So with the emission rigs, I think they're called emission rigs. I don't use any anti-scan ship, by the way. So I only use the rigs that increase the scanning stuff, basically to improve the scanner, but I don't use the rigs that do reduce your scan source radius, which is important for scanning. Basically, the smaller the source, the harder it is to scan, and the likelihood of getting a ping is going to be a lot higher. And if you get high ping, encounter with the pirate is hard, because you can warp out before they warp in. And that's what I noticed players started to do lately a lot. I remember, you will see it in one of the upcoming PvP videos that I'll upload probably tomorrow, probably the day after, I don't know. We did chase down I think it was a tornado, and someone scanned with a bad scanner. Everyone got notified in the system, including the tornado, and well, the tornado warped off and they did not return for a couple hours. Now, unfortunately, it just happens that we live in that system, so when the tornado came back, the tornado was basically destroyed fairly quickly. But it's a very good tactic to avoid pirates. So the breacher assault did perform really well. In the part where I took damage, that's pilot error, not the ship's fault. I messed up the orbit. I should have just went in a spiral approach as usual, but that's okay. This little boat did take the hit like a champ, and it did survive, and it did return the shield very quickly. So it's definitely a very fun to fly ship. I would say the breacher assault was the most fun to fly. The Punisher was also very fun.
Warp drive active.
The Punisher has the best armor resistance, the Incurus has the best armor repair, the Merlin Assault has the best shield, and this boat has the best shield booster. Overall, all of these assault frigates are nice and they're fun. Very good practice ships, very good main ships, very good ships for PvP, good ships for missions as well. Basically, if you want to fly them, go ahead. They are very cheap, very fun, and very low cost actually. So you will probably have a lot of fun if you fly these ships in a group, in a fleet, because a bunch of these ships can do a lot of damage. And with that being said, I hope that I could help you with the build on these assault frigates. That's basically my main goal. And if you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. As always, I love you all. Play safe, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.